First of all, I know you didn't mean to scar me and that it wasn't intentional. You were probably just trying to make a living as a writer, and because that's really hard to do, you took an adjunct job at the local university, making what was probably only a couple $1,000s a semester. You were assigned a class teaching 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds how to write, and that clearly was not your passion, teaching, or at least not teaching this age group. I get it. You know, we were young. Most of us didn't have anything to say yet, really, if we were privileged enough, and most of us at this university were very privileged. But just because damage isn't intentionally inflicted doesn't mean it's not done. And you were a damaging teacher to fledgling writers. I'd wanted to write stories for 6 years at that point. Since I was 12. It was my dream to be an author. And I'd signed up for your creative writing class, my first college creative writing class, full of optimism and eagerness to learn. I had no inflated ideas of my own abilities or skills. I knew I was a novice and had everything to be taught. I was, I think, appropriately self-conscious and nervous, but I was hopeful. I don't remember the first story draft I submitted to you, but I do remember the grade you gave me on it, a B-. I remember your comments in the margins having a tone of a little bit of annoyance, like you didn't want to have to be pointing certain things out to me, like it was a burden for you to have to read my work. And I remember the same vague disdain in your demeanor inside the classroom, which was a small seminar room where the 12 of us sat around a table and quietly critiqued each other's work under your watchful eye. The energy in that room I can still recall as well, 22 years later. It was heavy, charged, buzzing with our desperation to impress you and each other. It was anything but generative, or how I understand creativity now. It was anything but joyful. And yes, I was 18, and yes, I knew nothing, but I did know grades, and I knew how to read people. And so I did what I needed to do to get my A. I read your stories. I saw that you liked violence, that you liked darkness. I saw that you didn't write humor or joy, not in what I read. Because of the B- on the story I'd invented, I decided, well, maybe I shouldn't try to invent this time, even though this is a fiction class. Let me write the darkest, most violent thing I know from my own life and present it as a short story. You gave it an A. I walked away from that class feeling exposed and raw. I hadn't wanted to share that story with anyone, not you, and not even as fiction. But more impactfully, I walked away feeling certain of one thing, that I could not write fiction. I did not have the instincts. My instincts were a solid B-. If the only way for me to write A-worthy fiction was to finesse my own trauma into a pretend invention, I would simply choose another career. So that's what I did. I didn't write fiction for another 10 years. I went to law school instead. Authors who teach writing. By taking a job that means little more to you than some extra pay, you wield tremendous power over the lives of others, because creative spark is fragile. It's called spark for a reason. It's incredibly easy to smother and incredibly difficult to reignite once it is smothered. When you view your students with disdain, they feel it deeply. More deeply than I suspect you ever suspect. So do the world a favor. Don't do that. Show up with an attitude of support and respect, even for your students who haven't published before and aren't that great at writing yet, especially for these students. Or just don't teach. Find another job. If you can't summon actual support and respect for even the least skilled or developed writer, the world is probably better off with you making lattes than shaping writers' minds. You'll do far less damage that way. Sincerely, Mary. Speaking of writing, are you writing a book, or do you want to write a book? Because if so, I would love to hear from you. When I'm not writing, my mission is to help writers write their dream books. I love it. And if you're curious to know more, I have a video walking you through my 4 notebooks method for writing a novel. You can get that video along with my free template for using the 4 notebooks method to write your novel by applying to my program, the Book Incubator, at the link below. It's a 12-month MFA alternative, and the application is just 2 questions. I just ask you to tell me a little bit about you and your book or your book idea. It'll take you less than 5 minutes. So go to the link below or go to thebookincubator.com. I really hope to hear from you.